Welcome to another episode of Money, Sex, and Kids, and I have a super special guest with me today. This is a dear friend of ours, Andy Potachik, and I told you the goal of this show was not only to bring topics of money, sex, and kids to the table, things that nobody talk about, but need to be talked about, but also to bring stories that impact us all with an effort to get better together. And Andy's story not only had done that to our lives, my husband and I, but so many. And so I feel like it's so necessary that you all hear the story because of the way she lives today and the perspective she's gained from things that she's gone through over the last few years. So thank you for being open to share your story. And I know over the last few years, it's become probably a little more comfortable to share your story.
Totally.
Right?
I used to be a super private person. I mean, I still am, but noticing that how important it is to share my story and that it does help people, it impacts people. So getting out of my comfort zone.
Well, and I think
doing it more.
You're one of the most humble people I've ever met. And so I think part of the privacy that you hold so dear to you is also because you're not really the kind of person that wants to, hey, look at me, I'm here, and this is what I've gone through. But what it does is it does that. It gives people a chance to reevaluate their life, because a lot of what you went through, none of us probably will ever know or go through. Pray to God that we don't, because when you hear it, you will understand why. So let's start with that.
Okay.
Because she's a mom, she's a wife, she's an entrepreneur, she runs a business. So you do all the things. Yes. And like all of us moms, it's still chaotic.
It is.
Right? Life is chaotic.
Yep, totally chaotic. And I was in the middle of chaos, when this all happened. Life was fast, it was good, business was really good. I was super fit, so I'm a CrossFit coach too, and weightlifting coach. I was as healthy as I'd ever been, successful as I'd ever been. And then when I just have this heart situation that's happening, and turns out it's AFib. No big deal. Go get my little ablation done and we're good.
And you say no big deal because once you learn more about it,
I was like, whoa.
Right? Scared to death.
Like a medical issue. Yeah.
But that itself was a little bit more common.
Yes.
In other people than what then came after that.
Yeah. So after that, I get my first, huge migraine. I end up going to the hospital, and over the course of time figuring out, well, this migraine turned out to show up on a scan as something. Then more and more tests grow, and they determined that I have brain cancer. And my whole family and I was just totally taken back, because no signs or symptoms or anything whatsoever.
Again, epitome of health at that point in time, 3.5 years ago. Also, cancer, probably one of the scariest words anybody can hear. But then when you hear brain cancer, I mean,
I heard death sentence.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Like, where right then at that moment did your head go to? Like, where did your thoughts go?
My kids. Like, immediately. I just kind of saw their faces, and I was like, crap. And I wasn't sure that I was going to see them grow.
I know. I do too.
And so my prayer from then on out was and I've never really been comfortable praying for myself, but praying for my kids and being like, God, let me raise my kids. That's all I wanted.
That's all you wanted. As a mom with this death sentence at that point, was just to see your kids through life.
Because at that point too, they told me that it was inoperable. So it was going to be, chemo, radiation, and let's see how that works. And it's not like brain cancer with those kinds of options. It's not always, the best option. It's not always going to be a successful thing. And if it is, there's so much chance of it coming back. And even so, it was operable. I was able to have an operation.
And that
find
was
the right
because
person.
you found the right doctor
Yes.
and put the right team in place.
Yes.
And you really became your greatest advocate, because
Yeah.
many doctors said, no, we can't. Like,
Exactly.
the next step is chemo radiation, which you know from seeing other people go
Yeah.
through it, that is hard.
It is hard. And I mean, I was like ready. Like, I just was going to fight. I was going to do whatever it took.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful that I was healthy enough to go through that. But the fact that it was operable eventually when I found the right person, and that I knew that, okay, I can fight this, I decided that it wasn't going to be, you know, the end, and I was going to keep moving through. But even then, I got statistics from doctors saying, okay, so you make it through surgery, you're this age, this is your health, you have a 1 in 3 chance of making it 10 years. So they give you these stats, even when you think like, I'm healthy, I'm good, and you get through this like big health scare, it's like always kind of haunting you.
There's always something. And so looking ahead, I would imagine gets hard, because
Yeah.
they still put a barrier at a timeline.
Yeah, they're like, even if we kill your cancer, we get your cancer, you're this age, you're this healthy, this is the likelihood of it coming back and taking your life.
So you go through the surgery, you have the surgery, and after the surgery, I remember seeing you days,
Yeah.
I think, after, and you were up and walking. So that alone became a miracle in itself,
Yeah.
because that wasn't supposed to happen either, right? That quickness in that portion of the recovery.
I think just because of my age, honestly, like I would see a lot of other people who are in recovery from different traumatic brain injuries, and they all looked a lot different. You know, like there was a guy next to me who was in like a playpen looking thing, where like his bed was, he was like in a cage, is what I called it, and everything in the hospital is traumatic to me. So I'm like, this guy next to me is in a cage. There was a teenager next to me who'd been in a car accident and wasn't responsive, like she was on ventilators and things, and I just felt like so lucky. I'm like, I'm gonna walk circles, I'm gonna just like see what I can do, and fitness was something that really just helped me see that I was improving.
Because it was a measure of improvement, right? And I think that was the first time I saw you right after, as you walked into the CrossFit gym. Okay, here we are, like huffing and puffing, and here this rock star just walked out of surgery 3 days, and not just surgery on her leg, on her brain.
Yeah.
With Bruce, her husband, and
I just wanted to move. I mean, I just sat on a rower for like an hour and rode like.
But you wanted to be, and I would imagine being around a place that brought you so much comfort and joy and energy.
Yeah.
To see it again, help move you through the next phase.
Yeah, and I didn't want to like do traditional PT where it was like these slow, methodical movements. Like I just wanted to jump up and see if I could like do a burpee, or if I could hold on to the pull-up bar, just like using my grip strength, or pick something up off the floor. I was just wanting to do something that would kind of help me in real life too.
The surgery and the recovery after that brings you to what was the next course after that? You had the surgery, you recovered probably
Physically,
quicker than physically. And then what happened?
So the mental game was intense from the beginning. So like I said, like my kids flashed before my eyes, like my whole life, because I was wondering, like, did I do enough? Was I a good enough person to this point to where if I go into surgery and I'm gone, like, do I leave this, do I have a legacy? Like, am I going to be remembered for like yelling at my kids to hurry up, or, you know, am I going to be like that no fun mom, or am I going to have been that mom that like taught them these really good lessons that they could learn throughout their life? And so when I made it, I was like, okay, so perspective change, that is my new goal. So it wasn't like making so much money or, you know, getting somewhere on time. It was like, how am I going to like use every day and every moment, no matter how small, to be something that could stick with somebody, my kids mostly, or my husband and my family. But, you know, even anybody, like as a coach, I get a chance to touch a lot of people every day, and whether it's telling somebody who thought they were going to die that they did a good job, or that they, you know, did something impressive, or if it has to do with my business and just like taking a risk because, you know, I got one shot, you know, maybe this will work. So it kind of changed everything, just like perspective.
And Andy before cancer and Andy after, so your perspective change was probably the biggest. It sounds too that physically you were strong enough to get through it. Mentally, you had to continue to push through to continue to strengthen your mindset game.
Yeah, totally.
And that, I would imagine.
And that was a weakness at the beginning too. Like, I was reading books because I was like, I'm strong enough to do stuff, and like, I know how to do stuff, but like, I don't have confidence to do stuff. So I was like literally reading books about mental toughness when I was going through this. So God was like, hey.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was where I was going next. Faith.
Yeah.
So your faith, from what I saw outside looking in, had always been a pretty strong muscle in your body. But faith before cancer and faith after. How has that changed? Or how has that gotten better? Or how did that get you through?
So before cancer, I mean, you go through motions. Like, I grew up a Christian, went to church with my grandma, my mom, and was baptized, all that. And then it was like, okay, but you know, there's all these questions. You don't really see God working in your life sometimes. And when I looked back on my journey of how it started with AFib, and then there was this and that, and there was all these things that kind of like led up to the diagnosis and led up to me getting the right surgeon. And like, everything had to happen perfectly for me to have the outcome that I had. And so I decided, when I realized that it wasn't just coincidence, I'm like, God wants me here. Like, that was what got me through it. Because like, when I went into surgery, I was like, okay, so it would be one thing to be like super scared, but I was totally at peace, because I felt like God meant for me to get through this, because he set everything up for me to be in that perfect place and time.
And I think shifting the thought of coincidence to purpose and a plan, I mean, that again is a complete different mindset shift and perspective shift, because so many people fall into the, oh no, why me, poor me, and rightfully so. I mean, it's one thing if, you know, your car breaks down, why me, poor me, you know, that's just, but this is life or death. And did you ever have a moment of questioning why did you do this to me? Why am I going through this?
And that was like the aftermath, when I was like, I was having seizures, I was having trouble sleeping, I was having just kind of some setbacks here and there. And then I was thinking, you know, and then after getting those statistics, and I was just like, maybe going through all of this was going to lead me to something that wasn't really for me, but for like my husband or my family. You know, like, if I'm going to pass away and they're going to learn something from my death. and I went to counseling, of course, because I needed to work through these like mental things that were kind of holding me back. And she was like, Andy, that's ridiculous. Like, you're not a sacrificial lamb in your own story. And I was like, okay, like, I'm going to keep fighting then. And I'm, you know, like, my purpose is still for my family and my kids. And I'm just going to hold on to that. So.
And I think what outside looking in, what you don't see is your purpose is even more than being here for your kids and your husband and your family, because of all of these people that look at your life now and see the growth that has taken place and where you were and where you are, and they want to learn from that. Because like I said, so many of us will never get the words that were spoken to you by a doctor. But so many of us want to live a purposeful, intentional life. But we get caught up in the chaos of it all, and the self-doubt and the negativity and the why me and the poor me and the, oh, I'm just a ragged mom running around after kids.
I still feel like
I
that.
scream at my kids. I'm just trying to like make an impact. I'm trying to run a business, or I'm trying to do this. And like, we get in that like like sunken hole of just negativity. And you know, you had a point in your story that helped to push you out of that, but do you still fall into a day or two or a week stretch where you feel like, I'm the worst mom, or I can't be a great you know, wife to my husband?
Totally. I mean, and that is totally normal, and it's practice. So, and I didn't, you know, at first I told you I had all this perspective and all of this, like, everything's bright and shiny and new, and I have all this intention. And then, you know, that wears off. Just like anytime you go through a big event, it kind of wears off. And then you're like, okay, how do I get back to that? So I have to practice and, you know, keep reading and keep searching, keep trying to align, like, what my goals are and what that legacy looks like, and is everything I'm doing from the appointments I'm taking to the clients I'm taking to the jobs I'm doing to how I'm parenting, that all kind of line up with that bigger goal. And so practice.
Okay, practice.
Yeah.
So when you talk about practice, that practice looks different on everyone,
Yeah.
but practice, we know, is something you have to do every day, right? You have to practice at it. And the goal is never to be completely perfect at it,
No.
but to always have the intention to work towards it.
So every morning I wake up, 3 things. First thing I say, I like barely open my eyes. As soon as I focus, when it's summertime, the sun's come out earlier, so it's easier,
Yes.
and I like look for some light in the room to focus on. But I just say 3 things. I say thank you, thank you, thank you. And then in my head, I know it's thank you for my life, thank you for my health, and thank you for my loved ones. Because I woke up. I'm alive. I have a new chance. And like another mantra that I've really been using is new again. So like you can be new again every single day. And like you can go through something traumatic, something really hard, something that makes you feel broken in a way, or like damaged in a way, but it doesn't mean that you're always that person. You can be new again. And anytime we go through any big events in our lives, we change a little bit, and that's okay.
I was going to say, it's okay to change and grow. I think so often, you know, society says, you know, change is, you know, a changed person might be a different person, and we no longer, you know, might not like that new version or that changed person, but change is inevitable, right? Like whether you invite it or not, it's going to happen. I mean, we hope that we're different than when we were 13 years old to when we're 30 some years old, right? But little change every day is supposed to happen,
and
right?
It's hard because it's like you want to get back to the old me. Like if only I could feel like me again. And I did say that in the beginning. I was like, I want to feel like me again. But I was a new person. And it's like we all have those events in our lives where it was like you pre this and you post that, whether it's having kids, a job, something that took up a big part of your being, and there's just like a new chapter. Okay.
So every morning you start the day like that. I know we talked before about gratitude, and that was something pre-cancer. Did you live in a state of gratitude often, or was it kind of hit or miss and you didn't focus on it as much to where you are now?
So I was lucky because that's how I was taught to pray, is with gratitude.
Okay.
So I feel like I had gratitude. I just didn't really understand it.
Okay. And what do you mean by that?
So I knew like that I was blessed to have a house, a roof over my head, to have food in the fridge, that kind of thing, and have a family and a husband and love in my life. And I knew that those were all like blessings, but you kind of like, when you live with them for a while, you're like, well, what else do I get? You know, like what else is there that I should be reaching for? And so,
You almost, I think a lot of us, I know I do, some days, you know, you say how grateful you are for those things and you take them for granted because they're always there. And, you know, you had a moment where all of that was almost threatened to be taken from you. And so, your shift has to happen, but like what you said, practicing gratitude, because I would imagine it's still easy to fall, even though, I mean, we're human, right? And God didn't make us perfect here.
No.
So we're super imperfect, and we're even going through something like that. But I do often think of you, because I think all of this could be taken from me. I could I could get in the car and everything could be gone tomorrow because I could die in a car accident. You were faced with that life and death, right, staring at you. And so, but again, gratitude is a practice, you know? And so when you get far away from that, or days go by and you kind of forget to wake up and live your mantra and say your mantra and say those prayers, does it feel different?
It does. And I think, like, just like you said, like, how would I feel, or would I be okay as a person if everything was taken away from me? Like, would I be able to live with myself? And like, that's a good baseline.
Yeah.
Because some people don't know who their identity is without all of those things in their life.
Without all of those things. That's so true. So living purposefully, living with intention, doing it every day, practicing it every day. I know you and I both were at a Tony Robbins event, and he specifically talks about gratitude. And I think that the society we live in today, right at this moment, is trying to really put gratitude ahead of, you know,
So cool.
kind of, at least, or maybe it's just the people we're surrounding ourselves with. I'm okay with that too, because I can't have that kind of negativity in my life. But he actually showed the scientific proof and the research. And I know you said you've read into this a little bit more, but I was blown away by that. That you live in a state of frustration, and when they monitor someone that's living in, and we'll show a diagram of this just so you can kind of see what we're talking about and visualize it, putting a picture to what we're saying. But when he talked about living in state of frustration, your EKG and EEG, so monitoring your heart and your brain activity, is all out of whack, right? It's not in sync. And then when you're living in the state of gratitude, that takes practice. That takes you having to kind of train your mind to look at that. Then look at how pretty the picture is. And you see it on the screen right here. It is, your brain and your heart are in sync.
And I just knew it made
it's
me
amazing.
feel good.
Right. I always thought gratitude makes me feel good, but there's proof.
Is. And like that's not the first thing I've seen either. I mean, with like brain activity and just being calm and sleeping better at night. And there's just all of these things that help you when you have gratitude, like physically affects you, which is so cool.
It totally affects you. Now, for people out there listening and watching right now, I love takeaways, and I love to be able to apply things to our life. Many of us, there are many people watching that have been told you have cancer, and they have lived a version of your story, and they have been faced with that. But there's a lot of us that may never, that just might not be the way God writes our story, but it doesn't mean that we can't start practicing living a life of impact and in intention. I mean, how do we get to a place like that without ever having to hear those words, you might die?
I think it's just visualization. Like I said, like I imagine if those things were taken away from me and kind of assess like where I'm at, where my core is. And also assessing like when I'm gone, because we're all going to leave this earth, we're not going to be here forever. What kind of, how did we change things when we were here? How did we leave something behind in our kids or in our loved ones that, you know, they will spread for you? So just kind of like knowing what that is and then making sure that you're practicing and doing things that align with that.
Okay, waking up every day. I love what you do. We'll make sure we put this all in the notes so they kind of can see how you've mapped out your morning, because I really think when you start the morning with some sort of positive energy, with some sort of intent, it's harder to have a bad day. Don't you think?
Or at least a bad morning.
Or at least a bad,
starts off good. It's always kind of trickles throughout the day. And then just, I don't know, smiling is something that really helps. I even smile when I work out. So like when I'm in pain, I choose to smile.
Smile through it.
I can control that.
Right.
And it just kind of does something to your body, like you said, or like with gratitude. It just like sometimes you can do some things and you have more control over yourself and your health and your well-being than you really even realize. You're not stuck.
And those are the things that we can actually control. There's so much outside of this world we cannot control, but that is the one thing that we can. So to make an effort every day to better those three things.
Totally.
And one last thing. I think grace is a word that, you know, we talk about a lot. I think it's sometimes easier to give some other people grace than ourselves grace. And we've talked about this as a mom, as a wife, when we mess up and when we yell at our kids and we have those out-of-body experiences, like, I can't believe I just screamed that loud at them. Like, I love them so deeply, but like, you still have those moments, right?
I totally do. I am the furthest from perfect that there is. Like, I have lots and lots of bad moments. I have, you know, things that I'm not proud of that I say and do, but it's that, like, going back and saying, okay, that was then. I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to, you know, put things in place to kind of help that. You know, there's this meltdown we have every day with the kids, this fighting we have every day with the kids. Well, what can we do to kind of like change our whole like energy around this situation? Or, you know, I'm just kind of trying to like learn as I go, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to, like, how to raise kids. I don't know how to raise
I know.
kids.
I always say they don't give us a handbook. Like, you don't have a baby at the hospital and they send you home with this great handbook of like, you know, a table of contents, where to go when they have a meltdown at a restaurant.
Just try stuff and like see what works for you, and it might work for a little bit, and then it doesn't work anymore, and then try something new. So yeah.
Well, I think that you are like living, walking proof that a perspective and mind shift changes you as a person. Whether your story was written how yours was, you know, anyone watching, whether they've gone through anything like you have. But healing looks different on everybody, right? And tragedy and trauma is quite relative to the person.
Yeah, and it's an experience. So it's not something that defines you, and that was something that was big for me, because a lot of people wanted to call me a survivor. They wanted to call me, you know, label me with PTSD, or I have anxiety and all of this stuff. And it's like, these are experiences, and I'm working through, and you know, everything's just my journey. It's not who it's not my label. So that was big for me to realize.
I love that. I love that. It's an experience, and our journeys are hopefully long.
Yeah.
But each day is an experience, no matter what it brings to us. You see why I wanted her here, right? Well, I really, really appreciate you, and I'm thankful that you're here and healthy.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like to say that you're an example to others or a role model to others, but you really are. And to a lot of moms out there that are just living in a little bit of frustration, and sometimes just to hear another story that, like, even though you've gone through what you did, it's okay to still be frustrated. It's okay to still be, you know, not the best wife some days. It's okay to be all of that, but it's not okay to stay like that.
Right.
And to practice every day to get outside of that that way of living and thinking.
Again.
You can be new again. So here today we are going to choose to be new again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay! Was it good?
I cried in the beginning.
Oh my God! No, it was perfect.
I was like, I'm not gonna cry today. I didn't even wear my waterproof mascara.
Will you was good? Yeah, we cried. You didn't. It didn't run though. It was perfect.